NASA climate scientists are warning about the potential resurgence of so-called zombie viruses, or viruses that can come back from the dead.
These undead are attacking anything living, which is rapidly swelling their numbers.
Reports of confusion and erratic behavior, as well as rabid-like symptoms being reported all over the city. Now, whatever's happening does not appear to be a local phenomenon. We have other reports similarly coming from Colorado. We still have no specific answer as to what is happening. Reports are ranging from a germ or virus with mind-altering effects causing extreme aggression and mass hysteria.
You know what keeps me up at night? It's not horror movies. It's not the news. It's something far more terrifying. It's the fact that zombies already exist, right now, on this planet, and they're multiplying. Now, before you click away thinking I've lost my mind, hear me out. Because what I'm about to show you is going to make those zombie movies look like children's bedtime stories. We're talking about real organisms, real parasites, real diseases that turn living creatures into mindless, walking corpses. And the question we need to ask isn't whether zombies are real. They are. The question is, could it happen to us? Let me paint you a picture. Deep in the rainforests of Brazil, there's an ant going about its day, gathering food, doing ant things. Then suddenly, something changes. The ant stops following its colony. It starts wandering aimlessly, almost drunk. And then it does something absolutely bizarre. It climbs up a plant stem, clamps its jaws onto a leaf, and just stays there, frozen. Within days, a grotesque stalk erupts from the ant's head, raining spores down on the colony below. The ant is dead, but it's still serving a purpose. Just not its own purpose anymore. This isn't science fiction. This is Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, and scientists call it the zombie ant fungus. Here's what actually happens, and trust me, it's worse than any horror movie. The fungus spores land on an ant and burrow through its exoskeleton. Once inside, the fungus doesn't just kill the ant. No, that would be too simple. Instead, it grows through the ant's body, carefully avoiding vital organs to keep it alive. Then comes the truly horrifying part. The fungus releases chemicals that literally hijack the ant's brain. Think about that for a second. This fungus can control behavior. It can make a creature climb to a specific height at a specific time of day, face a specific direction, and bite down with exact pressure before dying. The ant's body becomes a puppet, and the fungus is pulling the strings. The ant shows all the classic zombie symptoms: loss of coordination, wandering away from safety, aggressive biting behavior, and complete loss of self-preservation instinct. It's a biological drone serving a foreign master. But here's where it gets really interesting. This fungus is incredibly specialized. It evolved over millions of years to control one specific species of ant. The chemical keys it uses to unlock an ant's brain won't work on other creatures. So, we're safe, right? Well, let me tell you about a beach in California. You're walking along the shore when you notice a snail doing something strange. It's not hiding under rocks like snails should. It's crawling up onto exposed leaves in broad daylight, pulsating with colorful, swirling patterns. It looks almost hypnotic, like a tiny disco ball. Beautiful, right? Wrong. That snail is screaming for help in the only way it can. Inside that snail is Leucochloridium paradoxum, a parasitic flatworm that makes the zombie ant fungus look merciful. This parasite invades the snail's eye stalks, swelling them up into thick, pulsating tubes filled with hundreds of baby worms. But it's not just sitting there. It's controlling the snail's behavior, forcing it to climb into the open where birds can see it. Those pulsating eye stalks? They look exactly like caterpillars, the favorite food of many birds. The parasite has literally transformed the snail into bait. The snail exhibits textbook zombie symptoms: loss of natural fear response, inability to hide from predators, compulsive climbing behavior, and complete disregard for its own survival. It's been reprogrammed. The bird eats the snail's eye stalks, the worms mature in the bird's gut, the bird poops out the eggs, another snail eats the contaminated droppings, and the cycle continues. It's brutal, it's efficient, and it's happening right now on beaches around the world. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's insects and snails. That's a long way from humans. We're mammals. We're complex. we have sophisticated immune systems and advanced brains. A fungus that evolved to control an ant can't just jump to controlling us. That would be like expecting a key made for a bicycle lock to open a bank vault. And you'd be right to think that. Except for one problem. There's already a zombie disease infecting mammals. Large mammals. Mammals with complex nervous systems not that different from ours. I'm talking about chronic wasting disease, or CWD, and it's spreading through deer, elk, and moose populations across North America right now like wildfire. CWD is caused by prions, which are basically misfolded proteins that act like biological computer viruses. They enter the brain and force other proteins to misfold, creating a chain reaction. And here's what makes prions absolutely terrifying. They're not alive. You can't kill them with heat, radiation, or disinfectants. They're just rogue molecules, but they turn brains into Swiss cheese. A deer infected with CWD goes through a transformation that should sound familiar by now. In the early stages, the deer shows subtle behavioral changes. It becomes less cautious, wanders away from the herd, loses its natural fear of humans and predators. As the disease progresses, the symptoms become more severe and more zombie-like. The deer develops a blank, staring expression with its head lowered and ears drooping. It walks in repetitive patterns, often in circles, completely unaware of its surroundings. Drooling becomes constant as the deer loses control of basic functions. It stops eating but continues to drink excessively, leading to rapid weight loss until it's just skin and bones, a walking skeleton. The deer stumbles and staggers, its coordination completely shot. It loses all fear response, standing motionless even when approached by predators or humans. In the final stages, the deer can't stand anymore. It just lies there, alive but not really living, waiting for the end. Does that sound familiar? It should. That's pretty much every zombie movie ever made. The blank stare, the stumbling gait, the lost awareness, the wasting away. The only difference is CWD-infected deer don't try to bite you. But here's the thing that should make your blood run cold. In some areas of Wyoming and Wisconsin, more than 50% of the deer population is infected. That's not an epidemic. That's a pandemic. So the real question isn't whether zombie diseases exist. They do. The question is, what's stopping them from jumping to humans? And here's where I need to be really honest with you. The answer is, not as much as you think. Remember when I said the zombie ant fungus was specialized for ants? That's true, but evolution doesn't care about what should or shouldn't happen. It only cares about what works. And parasites are evolution's most creative problem solvers. Let me tell you about Toxoplasma gondii, because this one should genuinely worry you. It's a parasite that normally lives in cats, but it needs to get from rats to cats to complete its life cycle. So, what does it do? It infects rats and literally removes their fear of cats. Infected rats actually become attracted to cat urine. They walk right up to their predators. The cat eats the rat, the parasite ends up where it needs to be, and the cycle continues. Now here's the kicker. Toxoplasma gondii can infect humans. It already has. Studies suggest anywhere from 10% to 50% of humans worldwide carry this parasite in their brains right now. Most people never know it's there. But research is showing that infected humans show measurable behavioral changes, increased risk-taking, slower reaction times, higher rates of anxiety and aggression, and some studies even link it to schizophrenia. We have a parasite in our brains that evolved to control mammal behavior, and it's already affecting how millions of humans act. But here's where it gets really interesting. None of these natural zombie diseases create the fast-moving, aggressive, biting zombies we see in movies. CWD makes deer slow and docile. The ant fungus makes ants climb and bite leaves, not other ants. So where did Hollywood get the idea for the flesh-eating, viral zombie? Turns out, they borrowed from real diseases and cranked them up to 11. Let's break down what a Hollywood zombie actually is from a medical perspective, because once you understand the biology, you'll see why it's both impossible and terrifyingly close to possible at the same time. A typical movie zombie has several key characteristics. First, they're aggressive and violent, constantly attacking uninfected humans. Second, they spread through biting, usually through saliva. Third, they have reduced pain sensitivity and ignore injuries that would stop a normal person. Fourth, they show degraded cognitive function but retain basic motor skills and can run or walk. And fifth, they seem to have one overwhelming drive to spread the infection. Let's tackle these one by one. Aggression and violent behavior, we've got that in rabies. Rabies is a virus that infects the brain and causes extreme aggression, hydrophobia, and yes, biting behavior. The virus literally evolved to make mammals bite because it spreads through saliva. An infected animal becomes a perfect transmission machine. Rabies has a mortality rate of nearly 100% once symptoms appear, and the symptoms include confusion, anxiety, aggression, hallucinations, and excessive salivation. Sound familiar? But here's the problem with using rabies as our zombie virus. It works too slowly. Rabies can take weeks or months to show symptoms because the virus has to travel from the bite site through the nervous system to the brain. Zombie movies need fast infection, like in 28 Days Later, where people turn in seconds, or World War Z, where it takes 12 seconds. That's not how biology works. Or is it? Enter bath salts and synthetic drugs. In 2012, there was an incident in Miami where a man high on synthetic drugs attacked another person and literally ate his face. The attacker showed inhuman strength, was impervious to pain, and made growling noises. Police had to shoot him multiple times to stop him. The media called it the Miami zombie attack, and suddenly fiction felt a lot closer to reality. While this was drug-induced, not a virus, it showed that the human brain can be chemically altered to produce zombie-like behavior. So we have rabies giving us aggression and biting, drugs showing us that humans can be chemically altered to ignore pain and act violently, CWD demonstrating long-term brain degradation in mammals, toxoplasma proving parasites can alter mammalian behavior, and the cordyceps fungus showing that organisms can completely override host behavior. Each piece exists. The question is, could they combine? Most scientists will tell you no, that's impossible. Different pathogens have different mechanisms, different transmission methods, different incubation periods. Getting all of those traits into one organism would require genetic engineering so sophisticated we couldn't do it even if we wanted to. And that's where most experts stop the conversation. But here's where it gets really interesting and where I need to introduce you to a concept that might change how you think about all of this. It's called convergent evolution, and it's nature's way of saying, if it works, I'll figure out how to do it. See, the zombie ant fungus didn't start out controlling ants. Millions of years ago, cordyceps fungi were just decomposers breaking down dead insects. But some fungi accidentally infected living insects, and the ones that survived inside the host long enough to reproduce had an advantage. Over time, natural selection favored fungi that could keep the host alive longer, then fungi that could influence host behavior just a little bit, then more and more, until we got the zombie ant fungus we see today. Evolution isn't intelligent, but it's relentless. It tries every possible combination over millions of attempts until something works. So the real question isn't whether the perfect zombie pathogen exists right now, it's whether the evolutionary pressure exists for one to develop. And here's where I have to tell you something uncomfortable. We might be creating that pressure ourselves. Think about it. We're more connected than ever before in human history. A person can contract a disease in one continent and be on another continent within 24 hours before symptoms even appear. We live in dense cities where diseases can spread incredibly efficiently. We're encroaching on wild habitats, exposing ourselves to pathogens that have never encountered humans before. We're creating the perfect storm for a novel pathogen to emerge and spread globally before we even know it exists. And we've already had several close calls that showed us just how fast society can collapse when faced with a pandemic. COVID-19 shut down the world, and that was a respiratory virus with a relatively low mortality rate. Imagine something that spread as easily as COVID, killed as reliably as rabies, and caused aggressive behavior. You wouldn't need reanimated corpses. You just need a virus that made people violent before it killed them. The result would be functionally identical to a zombie outbreak. But here's where I need to pump the brakes and give you the real scientific consensus, because fear-mongering isn't the point here. The point is understanding what's actually possible versus what makes good television. A true Walking Dead-style zombie is biologically impossible for several concrete reasons. First, a corpse can't move. Movement requires energy, energy requires metabolism, metabolism requires oxygen and nutrients, and all of that requires a functioning circulatory system. Once the heart stops, you've got maybe 4 minutes before brain death and rigor mortis begins. No virus can reanimate dead tissue because dead tissue doesn't have the machinery needed to execute viral instructions. Second, the degradation we see in zombie movies would make the zombies non-functional within days. A body without a working immune system, exposed to the elements, becomes a feast for bacteria, fungi, and insects. Flies would lay eggs, maggots would consume the flesh, and within a week, you'd have a skeleton, not a walking threat. The zombies in The Walking Dead should all be puddles of goo after one summer, not shambling around for years. Third, the Hollywood zombies' lack of pain response and reduced cognitive function would make them terrible survivors. Pain is a protection mechanism. Without it, zombies would break bones, tear muscles, and destroy their own bodies just trying to move. They'd walk on broken legs until the bones punch through the skin, rendering them immobile. They'd ignore environmental hazards and fall off cliffs into rivers or get crushed by falling debris. And with reduced cognitive function, they couldn't open doors, climb stairs, or navigate obstacles. Real zombies would be hilariously easy to avoid by just going upstairs. So if Hollywood-style zombies are impossible, what should we actually be worried about? The answer is scarier than any zombie movie because it's real and it could happen tomorrow. Imagine a virus that combines the respiratory transmission of influenza with the neurological effects of rabies. You breathe it in, it crosses into your bloodstream, travels to your brain, and within a day or two, you become violently aggressive and confused. You're not dead. You're very much alive, just infected. You bite and attack others, spreading the virus through saliva and blood. You retain enough cognitive function to run, open doors, and pursue people, but you've lost all higher reasoning and self-control. This scenario doesn't require any science fiction. Every component I just described exists in nature already. Influenza spreads through the air. Rabies affects the brain and causes aggression. We just need them to combine, or for a new pathogen to evolve those traits. And with millions of viruses mutating billions of times every single day across the planet, the statistical probability of a nightmare scenario emerging isn't zero. In fact, there are already diseases that come close. Japanese encephalitis causes brain inflammation and aggressive behavior. African sleeping sickness causes neurological damage and behavioral changes. Rabies, as we discussed, hits almost every box except rapid transmission. And gain-of-function research, where scientists intentionally modify pathogens to study how they might evolve, has shown that dangerous traits can be combined in laboratory settings, which means it's at least theoretically possible in nature too. The movie, 28 Days Later, might have actually gotten closest to a realistic zombie scenario. The infected aren't dead, they're living people driven into a rage state by a modified rabies virus. They starve to death within weeks because they're still biological organisms with biological needs. They can't coordinate complex actions, they just run and attack. And the virus spreads through blood and saliva from biting. Replace the 20-second incubation period with a more realistic 24 to 48 hours, and you've got something that could actually exist. So here's where we land after looking at all of this evidence. Are shambling, reanimated corpses going to rise from their graves? Number. That violates basic biology and physics. Could a pathogen emerge that causes aggressive, violent behavior and spreads rapidly through human populations, creating a scenario functionally similar to a zombie outbreak? Yes. That's not only possible, it's a matter of when, not if, based on evolutionary probability and human behavior patterns. The good news is, we'd have tools to fight back that zombie movies never show. Modern medicine understands neurology. We have sedatives, antipsychotics, and restraints. We have vaccines and antivirals that could be developed rapidly. We have communication technology to coordinate responses. And most importantly, infected people would still be alive, which means they'd have vulnerabilities. They'd need food, water, and sleep. they'd succumb to injuries and other diseases. They wouldn't be the unstoppable force that movies portray. The bad news is that human civilization is fragile. COVID-19 showed us that a relatively mild pandemic can disrupt supply chains, overwhelm hospitals, and create social chaos. A disease that caused violent aggression would be catastrophically worse because infected individuals would actively destroy infrastructure rather than just avoiding it. Even if the mortality rate was low, the societal collapse could be severe. But here's the thing that should give you comfort. We're watching for this. The CDC has a literal zombie preparedness plan, not because they expect zombies, but because preparing for a zombie outbreak means you're prepared for pretty much any pandemic scenario. Scientists around the world monitor emerging diseases. We have early warning systems, rapid response teams, and international cooperation agreements. We're not perfect, but we're not helpless either. The real takeaway from all of this isn't that you should fear zombies. It's that you should respect parasites, viruses, and the incredible power of evolution. Nature has created mind-controlling fungi, behavior-altering parasites, and brain-destroying prions. These aren't fictional monsters. They're real organisms solving survival problems in horrifying ways. And while they're unlikely to create the zombie apocalypse Hollywood imagined, they remind us that nature is far more creative and terrifying than any screenwriter could imagine. So how close are we to a zombie virus outbreak? The answer is, we're living through dozens of them right now. They're just happening to ants, snails, deer, and rats instead of humans. We're one evolutionary jump away from it being our problem, but we're also more prepared than we've ever been in human history to handle it. The zombies are already here. They're just not after us yet. And as long as we keep studying them, keep monitoring emerging diseases, and keep respecting the power of evolution, maybe they never will be.